My name is Ethan. This is a story my old friend Caleb has told me many times, something that happened to him many years ago. I asked him recently to write out the detailed version and gave me permission to share it online because I've always found it deeply unsettling. Caleb was one of those guys you only had to meet once to know he was the real deal. In his 50s, solid build, weathered skin from decades working in the salt air. He worked in marine salvage and coastal infrastructure. Basically, when something broke near the water, Caleb was one of the people you'd call to fix it. But he wasn't just a contractor. He'd been a diver, a ship technician, and even spent time doing remote inspections for the government. The guy had seen just about everything. So when he told me this story, I didn't doubt him for a second. He said it happened back in 2013 when he was hired by a small county up in Washington state to do a structural inspection of an old decommissioned lighthouse. The county had inherited the property years earlier and didn't know what to do with it. Developers wanted to tear it down, historians wanted to preserve it, and no one wanted to pay for either. Caleb's job was simple: go there alone, assess the place inside and out, and figure out whether it was even safe to restore. The lighthouse was on a remote rock island about an hour off the mainland. Not a big island either, just a hunk of stone and dirt, maybe 300 feet wide, with nothing but the lighthouse itself, a generator shed, and some rusted-out scaffolding from decades past. The place hadn't been used in years, and it wasn't exactly a tourist spot. There weren't even any docks, just a little ledge where a small Coast Guard boat could drop someone off at high tide. Caleb packed light food for 4 days, a sleeping bag, some tools, a clipboard, and a two-way marine radio. The plan was simple: get dropped off Monday morning, complete a full walkthrough by Wednesday, and call in for pickup Thursday afternoon. He didn't think twice about going alone. He'd done this kind of job dozens of times when he first got there. The place was quiet, cold, cloudy, but calm. The air had that familiar mix of salt, metal, and decay you expect from something that's been sitting abandoned for decades. The lighthouse itself was tall, maybe 50 feet, built in the early 1900s. It had the classic spiral staircase inside, leading up to the beacon room. The glass lens hadn't worked in decades, but the structure itself was solid. He began his usual safety checks: support beams, stair integrity, window fittings. The floorboards on the lower level were warped but walkable. The second floor was a storage room, empty except for some rusted metal cabinets. The third floor had a tiny sleeping quarter that hadn't been used in years. Caleb ended up laying out his sleeping bag on the ground floor near the generator room, where it was warmer and out of the wind. The first night was uneventful. Too quiet, he said. You don't notice how noisy the world is until it's not. There were no birds, no insects, not even the sound of waves slapping the rocks, just wind, and even that was soft. On the second day, the fog rolled in thick. Caleb woke up to a completely white world outside. You couldn't see more than 5 feet past the window. He said it wasn't like any fog he'd ever seen before. It was so dense it looked solid, like a wall. Still, it wasn't unusual for the area, so he didn't worry. He spent most of the day taking notes on the upper stairwell. That's when he noticed something strange. Halfway up the staircase to the beacon room, there was a maintenance closet, built into the wall. He'd tried to open it on day one, but the hinges were so corroded it wouldn't budge. Now, it was open a crack, not much, maybe an inch, but enough to tell it had moved. He figured the moisture had caused it to shift, but it unsettled him. Inside the closet, completely dark, sat something in the back corner, a wooden box about the size of a lunchbox, covered in damp moss like it had just come out of the ocean. He didn't open it. He shut the door again and made a note to report it that night. Something woke him up, not a sound exactly, but more like the absence of sound, like everything just stopped. Then he heard footsteps on the metal stairs above him. At first he assumed it was an animal, but the steps weren't descending. They were climbing. Whatever was in the tower was going up. He turned on his flashlight and aimed it at the stairwell entrance. Nothing. The sound eventually stopped, and silence returned. The next morning, Caleb searched the entire lighthouse, every room, every closet, even the roof. There was nothing out of the ordinary, except for that box. It was now sitting outside the closet, halfway into the stairwell, still covered in moss. He stood there for a long time staring at it, unsure of what to do. Eventually, he picked it up. It was heavier than expected, waterlogged, and sealed shut with nails. He didn't pry it open. Instead, he left it at the base of the stairs and went outside to clear his head. That's when he saw the footprints, bare footprints, not boots, not shoes, just wet, naked feet leading from the north side of the lighthouse toward the cliff edge. And they stopped there, no trail coming back. just 10 or 12 prints in the dirt, ending at a sheer drop into the sea. He stood there trying to rationalize it. Maybe someone came ashore, but the only boat scheduled was his return pickup. That was still a day away. He considered calling early, but the fog was still too thick. They wouldn't be able to navigate safely. So, he went back inside, locked every door and hatch, and wedged the stairwell shut with an iron pipe. He tried to sleep that night. About 1:30 a.m., the upper beacon room door slammed shut with such force it shook dust loose from the ceiling. Then came the knocking, 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the inside wall of the tower, not on the door or the window. On the wall itself, like someone was standing just behind the bricks, tapping gently with their knuckles. Caleb didn't move. He lay frozen until the sound stopped when the sun came up. He checked the lighthouse again. The box was gone. The closet door was now wide open. At this point, he knew he wasn't alone. He used the radio to call for immediate extraction, reporting a medical issue to avoid questions. They said they'd try to reach him in a few hours. He packed everything and waited at the landing ledge. The fog didn't lift, it actually got thicker. He sat there for nearly 7 hours, unable to see more than a few feet in front of him. The sun was going down and the temperature was dropping. Then he heard footsteps behind him in the gravel near the base of the lighthouse. He turned, but saw nothing. Or maybe he just couldn't see through the fog. He ran to the edge of the cliff and stayed there, frozen, until he heard the sound of the boat horn in the distance. They pulled him out just after dark. The deckhand who helped him on board asked why he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Caleb told him the lighthouse was unsafe and needed to be sealed off. He filed a brief report later, saying the structure was compromised and unfit for entry, but he never mentioned the box or the footsteps. He told me he didn't include those parts because he genuinely thought he might have been losing his mind. From isolation, that's where Caleb's written account ended. He never went back to that lighthouse. He wrapped up his remaining projects that year and slowly phased himself out of fieldwork. Within a year, he stopped taking contracts altogether. Said he wanted to focus on dry land from then on. When I asked if that was because of what happened at the lighthouse, he just shrugged and said, "I've seen enough out there." I pressed him only once about what he truly believed happened on that island. He looked me straight in the eyes and said something that stayed with me ever since. Some places are meant to be left alone. They just need time and silence. That was all he said. I tried looking into the lighthouse myself later, but I couldn't find much. The coordinates, Caleb scribbled in his notes, don't point to any listed structure. County records mention a decommissioned tower off the coast, but there's no official name and no accessible history. It's like he was never even there. And that's the part that unsettles me most. Not what Caleb said, but what nobody else ever did. I still don't know whether I hope he really was just losing it out there or if he wasn't. My cousin Liam has been in the Coast Guard for over 10 years. He's the last person you'd expect to exaggerate a story. He's straightforward, practical, doesn't believe in the paranormal, and isn't the type to get spooked easily. He told me this story in the summer of 2022. I made him repeat it several times because it was just that disturbing, and every time, the details were exactly the same. It happened back in 2017 when he was assigned to a lighthouse off the coast of Maine. The place was called Dagger Rock, way out there. The only way to reach it was by boat or helicopter. It's nothing more than a jagged chunk of stone in the ocean, with a single lighthouse and one auxiliary building for fuel and equipment. There's no power grid, no plumbing, and barely any signal. The lighthouse is mostly automated, but it still requires manual checks now and then. Usually, it's a solo job. But because there had been unexplained electrical issues the year before, the Coast Guard sent 2 people this time, Liam and a guy named Carter. The first few days were normal, cold, windy, and monotonous. During the day, they inspected the beacon, tested backup batteries, refilled the diesel generator, and scraped away thick salt corrosion from the interior metalwork. At night, they'd read, eat, and play cards to pass time. It was remote, but nothing they hadn't expected. Then came the 4th night. Liam woke up around 2 a.m. feeling strange. He wasn't in pain or sick, just uneasy. The air felt heavier, like the pressure before a thunderstorm, but the sky outside was clear and eerily silent. He sat up in the dark, looking around, and that's when he noticed the beacon wasn't rotating. The lighthouse was supposed to send a sweeping beam every few seconds, even during maintenance. It was a big deal if the light failed. He woke Carter up and the 2 of them climbed the spiral staircase to investigate at the top. The rotating gears were still running, but the actual beacon wasn't moving. Something had jammed it. They found a dark cloth like an old coat or blanket shoved deep into the gear system. It was drenched and coated in a slimy, mossy gunk that smelled like rotting seaweed. They were confused. The doors had been locked, the windows sealed. No birds, no wind. It made no sense. They tossed the cloth into the wind and chalked it up to a strange fluke, but the next night, the same thing happened just after 2 a.m. Liam woke up to find the beacon stuck again. This time, the cloth was different. Smaller, like a scarf or shawl. It was frayed, red, soaked in what looked like seawater. Tiny crustaceans clung to it, like it had been pulled right from the ocean. That's when it stopped feeling like coincidence. They double-checked everything. Doors locked, windows untouched. No signs of intrusion. They began to wonder if someone or something had gotten into the lighthouse and was intentionally sabotaging the beacon. From that point on, they took extra precautions. Every night after their final check, they locked the beacon room and the lower entry door. They blocked the stairwell with heavy crates. But on the 7th night, something happened that Liam still refuses to explain. He was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, when he heard Carter whispering, but he wasn't speaking to Liam. He was murmuring into the corner of the room, saying things that didn't make sense. Like someone was standing there. Liam sat up and asked who he was talking to. Carter blinked slowly, confused, and said he hadn't said anything. Later that night, Liam found him sitting by the window, staring at the rocks below. When asked what he was doing, Carter said he thought he saw someone down there the night before, standing just at the edge of the light's reach, watching them, then disappearing when the beam rotated back. After that, things got worse. Carter stopped sleeping, barely spoke, spent hours gazing out the window. When Liam asked if he was okay, Carter mumbled about hearing voices in the walls, noises coming from the stairwell. On the 9th night, they both heard footsteps, not creaking boards or shifting weight from wind reel. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming down from the beacon room above. Liam looked over and saw Carter standing at the bottom of the stairs, staring up, frozen. He asked if Carter had gone up there. Carter said no. Then he asked Liam the same. Neither of them had moved. They stood there in silence. The footsteps stopped, but the silence that followed was somehow worse. That night, they pushed a dresser in front of the bedroom door and slept with knives under their pillows. On the 11th night, the beacon failed again. They climbed the tower, and this time, the beacon room door wasn't just unlocked. It had been blown open wide, like someone had kicked it in. The wind screamed through the chamber. Inside, the beacon wasn't just off, it had been tampered with. The industrial bulb had been unscrewed and placed upright in the center of the room. That bulb wasn't easy to remove, it required force. Liam stood there frozen in fear while Carter kept muttering that someone had done this. Then Liam felt something cold brush against his back. He spun around, no one there. Carter had turned ghost pale. He pointed at the wall and whispered that he saw a hand come out of the bricks. They bolted, raced down the stairs, and locked themselves in the bedroom. Liam didn't sleep. Carter sat in the corner, rocking, whispering to someone invisible. The next morning, Liam used the emergency satellite phone to request an early pickup, claiming a major mechanical failure. The boat came that afternoon, but here's the creepiest part. The crew said they had already received a distress call from Liam at 2:12 am. Liam hadn't made any call. He hadn't even touched the phone until morning. The crew said the call came through full of static, with a voice saying someone's here with us, and then it cut out. Carter didn't speak once on the ride back. A few months later, he quit. The Coast Guard never told anyone what really happened out there. Liam still takes on maintenance assignments sometimes, but he says one thing with absolute certainty: hell, never go back to Dagger Rock. This happened during the COVID lockdowns, during that phase where everyone was going stir-crazy, stuck in their homes with nothing to do. I was single at the time, swiping on Tinder and chatting with people while watching movies or shows, because, really, what else could you do on a weeknight during lockdown? That's when I struck up a conversation with a girl I'd been following on Instagram for years. Her name was Jenna, though she went by Jay. We both lived in Suffolk County, Long Island, New York, about 20 minutes from the Hamptons, maybe an hour from Montauk. One night, out of sheer boredom, we agreed to hang out. Conveniently, she lived just 5 minutes from me, so I picked her up. But we drove to a nearby park that was technically closed, and we just sat there drinking White Claws. I immediately got the sense that she was a little rebellious, but in a cool way. She didn't mind hopping fences, sneaking into places, or breaking a few rules just for fun. There was an instant mutual connection, and within less than an hour, She came up with the idea of driving out to Montauk to walk the cliffside trail around the lighthouse. Technically, the lighthouse grounds were closed after sunset. Honestly, they might have been shut entirely during the lockdown. I wasn't 100% sure, but I said I was down. I love little spontaneous adventures like that. So, we finished our drinks and made the long drive east to Montauk Point. When we arrived, Jay told me to park right in the lighthouse parking lot. I hesitated, unsure if there would be any security patrolling, but she seemed confident. According to her, she'd done this before the lockdowns, and the lot was completely empty. No cars, no signs of anyone else, so I took her word for it. We had another White Claw in the car while I nervously looked around, half expecting to see a security vehicle roll in at any moment. Jay just laughed and told me to chill. Eventually, we started walking toward the lighthouse. Seeing a lighthouse up close at night is weirdly beautiful and a little creepy. There's something eerie about it, like the atmosphere is suspended between reality and something else. She took the lead, guiding us along a trail that veered off the main entrance path, probably so we wouldn't be visible in the light or cameras. This was my first time ever visiting the Montauk Lighthouse. She led us straight to the cliffside trail behind the lighthouse, where a line of rocks formed a path known as the Cliff Walk. We used our phone flashlights to see, because the area was mostly dark. Maybe some lights were supposed to be on, but that night, only a few dim ones flickered near the main entrance. Everything else was dark except for the lighthouse's rotating beam. As we carefully made our way along the cliff walk, Jay, who was walking behind me, suddenly said my name. I turned, and she was pointing her flashlight back behind us, toward the rocks. That's when I saw him. There was someone there, a man just standing still among the rocks. He wore a coat with a hood pulled up over his head. From what I could tell, he was black, but we couldn't determine his age or anything else. I called out asking if he worked there. He didn't respond. He just stood there, completely still. We're going to leave. Sorry, I added, hoping it was just a security guard. But then he finally spoke. You all want to buy some coke? Finding out he wasn't security actually made things worse. Why was this guy standing silently in the dark, tailing us along a cliffside? Why here, why now? I told him, no man, we're good, and motioned for Jay to move ahead. I let her walk in front of me and we continued along the trail, but he started walking too. He didn't say another word. He didn't try to push the offer. He just quietly followed, maintaining the same distance as us. Every time I looked back with the flashlight, he was there, neither closer nor farther away. It was beyond unsettling. We finally reached the end of the cliff walk and hurried through the grass toward the car. He was still behind us, still following, still silent like he had all the time in the world. Then we heard him call out again. Where are you going? This guy was clearly trying to provoke something, but I didn't respond. I told Jay not to either. We picked up the pace, walking fast but not running, because if we ran, it might trigger a chase. Then we noticed two more guys stepping out from behind the bushes, near our car. I didn't even hear what one of them shouted. My focus was entirely on getting to the car, unlocking it, and getting the hell out of there. We made it to the vehicle and jumped in. Jay screamed when we both realized the three guys were now surrounding the car. I locked it instantly. Just seconds before two of them tried opening the doors, I threw the car in reverse, the only direction where I wouldn't hit anyone, and backed out of the lot as fast as I could. They hit and kicked the car as we pulled away, but they didn't chase us. Once we were out of there and safely on the road, both of us sat in silence. Our hearts were pounding. The adrenaline had taken over, but when it wore off, that silence just turned heavy. We didn't say much the rest of the way back. I dropped her off and we called it a night. We did hang out a few more times after that and still keep in touch now and then. But that night still freaks me out. My friends think it might have been a local gang, Crips, maybe, I don't know. But whatever that was, I have no interest in ever going back to that lighthouse at night.